Everyone says they do not want a war. NATO leaders hesitate to even whisper about invoking Article 5, the collective defense clause that says an attack on one ally is an attack on all. But if no one wants a war, then why does the entire world look like it is quietly preparing to fight one? Russian drones are striking near NATO borders. European nations are scrambling jets and training civilians. The United States is moving F-35s to the Caribbean. Australia is building nuclear submarine shipyards. China is warning the Philippines. Everywhere you look, pieces are sliding into place like chess pieces before the opening move. So ask yourself this: if everyone swears they want peace, what are they not telling us? In the past 48 hours, the world has shifted a little closer to the edge. According to Reuters, dozens of Russian drones have crossed into Polish airspace, with at least one striking a residential building while families were watching the evening news. Poland has already triggered NATO's Article 4, the clause that allows any member to call urgent consultations when its security feels threatened. At the same time, Romania confirmed that a Russian drone breached its airspace during another strike on Ukraine. Russia has tested its Zircon hypersonic missiles during military drills, while Ukraine has launched drone attacks on one of Russia's largest oil refineries, igniting massive fires. And far from Europe, other pieces are moving too. The United States has deployed F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico in response to rising tensions with Venezuela. China has warned the Philippines against what it calls provocations in the South China Sea. North Korea has threatened retaliation if the U.S. and South Korea continue joint military drills. Meanwhile, Australia has announced an $8 billion investment to expand a nuclear-powered submarine shipyard, giving the U.S. Navy long-range reach across the Indo-Pacific. These are not speeches or theories. These are real moves on the global chessboard. And that is the key. Today, we are not here to analyze what world leaders say. We are here to analyze what they are doing. Because while they all speak of avoiding war, their actions tell another story. In this video, we will examine how Europe is fortifying its defenses, how Russia is escalating its shows of force, how other flashpoints are heating up from the Middle East to the Pacific, how the United States is repositioning its military, and how even far away Australia is preparing for the possibility of conflict. Finally, we will ask the question no one wants to ask out loud. Are these steps meant to prevent war, or are they quietly laying the groundwork for it? Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because in the coming weeks we will continue tracking the critical moves shaping what could become the next global crisis. Europe is moving like a continent that smells smoke before the fire. According to Reuters, Poland has scrambled fighter jets, shut down the Lublin airport as a preventive measure, and deployed air defense batteries along its eastern frontier. This came after dozens of Russian drones crossed its airspace during strikes on western Ukraine, with one drone slamming into a residential building while civilians were watching the evening news. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said that Poland is now at its closest point to open conflict since the Second World War. That statement is not just political theater. It captures a shift in mindset. In neighboring Romania, as reported by Sky News, the military scrambled MiG-21 fighters after another Russian drone violated its airspace, the second such incident in weeks. And NATO has started quietly reinforcing its eastern flank. According to AP News, the alliance is deploying more air defense systems to Poland and the Baltic states, while The Drive reports that NATO fighter squadrons have increased their patrol tempo and alert status. Even civilian airspace is being adapted. Reuters highlighted that European civil aviation authorities are now reviewing flight corridors to avoid risk zones over eastern Poland and western Ukraine. None of this is officially called war preparation, but the pattern is clear. Governments are moving pieces as if they expect escalation, even while they deny it publicly. It is what analysts at The Guardian have called the shadow posture, where defensive measures are framed as routine even though they signal rising fear behind the scenes. And here is the critical point for American viewers. Poland is not a distant front, it is a NATO member. Under the treaty, if it is attacked, the United States is obligated to respond. Every radar battery placed in Poland is another line of deterrence that Washington is now tied to defend. Ask yourself this: If Europe is moving this fast, how long before the US is pulled further in, not by choice, but by treaty? While Europe scrambles to harden its defenses, Moscow is doing the opposite. It is turning up the heat. According to Reuters, Russia has just test-fired a Zircon hypersonic missile during military drills in the Barents Sea. The Zircon is designed to travel at speeds of up to Mach 9, making it almost impossible to intercept with current NATO missile defenses. This was not a battlefield necessity. It was a message that Russia can reach anywhere, fast and without warning. At the same time, Russian strategic bombers have been flying over the Arctic and the Barents region, escorted by fighter jets. These flights are not random. As reported by The Guardian, they are part of long-range nuclear strike exercises that Russia has revived in response to NATO's growing presence on its borders. They do not fire weapons, but they cross radar lines, trigger NATO air patrols, and force Western militaries to burn through readiness cycles. Every scramble, every alert, costs money and stretches resources. And on the ground, the war in Ukraine is being used as a stage for escalation. According to Reuters, Ukrainian forces recently struck a major Russian oil refinery deep inside Russian territory, sparking massive fires, while Russia has intensified missile barrages against Ukrainian energy infrastructure. This is where the logic becomes dangerous. Moscow is showing that any move against it will come with a high price tag. Analysts call this threat diplomacy, the art of shaping your enemy's choices not with words, but with fear of the cost of their actions. For NATO, this is a calculated trap. If the alliance moves more forces east, Russia can argue it is being encircled. If NATO holds back, Moscow can claim weakness and push further. Either choice feeds the Kremlin's narrative. And here is where the tension sharpens. This is no longer about who holds territory. It is about who controls perception. Ask yourself, if Russia keeps raising the cost of resistance, how long before caution turns into paralysis? While the world's eyes are fixed on Eastern Europe, other flashpoints are quietly heating up, each one like a lit fuse waiting to spark. According to Reuters, the United States has deployed F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico as a visible show of force amid rising tensions with Venezuela. Washington says it is a deterrence move, but Caracas has called it hostile, accusing the U.S. of preparing for possible intervention. This is not just posturing in the Caribbean. It means American pilots are now sitting minutes away from contested airspace, and one miscalculation could trigger a chain reaction. Far across the Pacific, China has issued sharp warnings to the Philippines over what it calls provocations in the South China Sea. As reported by Reuters, Chinese military spokesmen have warned that further Philippine patrols near disputed reefs could lead to unpredictable consequences. The South China Sea is one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth, carrying about a third of global trade. If even a small clash were to erupt there, global markets would feel the shock overnight, from stock indexes to gas prices at your local pump. Meanwhile, North Korea is once again raising the temperature. According to Reuters, Kim Jong-un's sister has warned the U.S. and South Korea against conducting joint military drills, calling them a rehearsal for invasion. Pyongyang has hinted it might review its nuclear policy at an upcoming party meeting, which analysts see as a signal that new missile tests could be imminent. Every time North Korea rattles its nuclear saber, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command must shift resources, moving ships, aircraft, and missile defenses that might otherwise be stationed in Europe or the Middle East. And in the Middle East, the shock is real. As reported by Al Jazeera, Israel has carried out strikes in Doha, Qatar, claiming it targeted Hamas leadership operating on Qatari soil. This is not just another chapter in the Gaza conflict. Qatar hosts the largest U.S. airbase in the region, Al Udeid, and has long been seen as a relatively stable hub. Striking there crosses a diplomatic red line, one that risks dragging Gulf states into a wider confrontation. Individually, these flashpoints might seem separate, but together they form what analysts call the tinderbox effect. Each crisis forces the U.S. to stretch its attention and its forces. And the more fronts it must manage, the thinner deterrence becomes everywhere. So ask yourself, If a spark ignites in one of these places, how long before the flames leap across the map? While allies brace an adversary's posture, Washington is quietly shifting its own pieces across the global board. According to Reuters, US F-35 fighter jets have landed in Puerto Rico, officially framed as a deterrent move amid rising tension with Venezuela. It may sound like a regional gesture, but stationing fifth-generation stealth aircraft this close to South America gives the Pentagon a rapid strike option in a theater it rarely highlights. It is a reminder that even as Europe dominates the headlines, the US is watching other potential flashpoints and moving to preempt them. In Europe, the American footprint is expanding again. As reported by Reuters, the US has increased its rotational deployments in Poland and the Baltic states, sending more air defense systems, armored units, and logistics teams to reinforce NATO's eastern flank. These deployments are not symbolic. They mean real families back home are watching loved ones pack for a front line that feels far away until you remember it is a NATO border. The Pentagon calls it deterrence, but for thousands of American households it feels like the early rumble of mobilization. At the same time, the US is turning up pressure inside NATO. According to Reuters, Trump has urged alliance members to halt purchases of Russian oil entirely, warning that buying energy from Moscow funds the war machine. Cutting off Russian oil sounds clean on paper, but it would send energy prices soaring across Europe and ripple back to American markets. Every barrel not bought from Russia would have to be replaced from somewhere else, pushing up global demand and hitting Americans at the gas pump and on their heating bills. Behind the visible moves, the cyber front is also shifting. According to Defense One, the White House Cyber Office has warned of increasing Russian state-backed hacking attempts and has called for a whole-of-nation effort to harden critical infrastructure. This means power grids, financial networks, pipelines, and hospitals are on heightened alert. For ordinary Americans, it is a reminder that a war in Europe would not stay confined to Europe. A cyber attack that knocks out banking or utilities could hit your town as easily as any battlefield. Perhaps most telling is what is happening deep inside America's industrial base. As reported by Reuters, the U.S. is expanding production lines for missiles, artillery shells, and even nuclear submarine components. This is not emergency wartime mobilization, but it is preparation for the possibility. Factories in places like Texas, Alabama, and Pennsylvania are adding shifts, hiring welders, and securing rare materials. It may not make the evening news, but it is how a nation quietly sets its chessboard before the clock starts. And here is the question that hangs over all of this. Are these moves meant to prevent war, or to make sure America is the first one ready when it begins? While Europe and the Atlantic consume the headlines, another front is quietly taking shape thousands of miles away. According to Reuters, Australia has announced an $8 billion investment to expand a nuclear-powered submarine shipyard in Western Australia. These are not nuclear-armed vessels. They are nuclear-propelled, which means they can stay submerged for months, travel vast distances without refueling, and operate silently in contested waters. For the United States, they are not just ships. They are moving pieces in a long game of power projection across the Indo-Pacific. This is part of the AUKUS Pact, the strategic alliance linking Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Under this deal, Washington will eventually transfer technology and even submarines themselves to Canberra, creating a fleet that can patrol from the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. As reported by CNN, the shipyard expansion in Western Australia is the physical backbone of that plan. It will build, refit, and sustain the submarines that form what analysts call the silent wall, a hidden deterrent against Chinese naval expansion. To understand why this matters, picture the map. While Russia presses Europe's borders, China has been building artificial islands, militarizing reefs, and warning the Philippines, Japan, and Taiwan to stay clear of what it calls its historic waters. Just this week, according to Reuters, Beijing's military warned Manila against provocations in the South China Sea. In this climate, long-range nuclear-powered submarines are not just weapons, they are insurance. They can appear anywhere, anytime without detection. And that uncertainty forces China to think twice before pushing too far. But there is another layer. By anchoring this shipyard in Western Australia, the U.S. is effectively creating a second strategic pole. The Atlantic has long been America's traditional theater, with Europe as its core. The Indo-Pacific is becoming the second pillar. This is what some analysts at The Guardian have begun calling the twin hemisphere posture. The idea is simple. If conflict erupts in Europe, U.S. forces in the Pacific remain strong enough to deter China. And if conflict erupts in Asia, forces in Europe hold firm. It is about splitting risk, not concentrating it. And here is the thread that ties it back to everything else. While leaders talk about avoiding escalation, they are building the infrastructure to fight on multiple fronts if escalation happens anyway. The Australian shipyard is not just a construction site. It is a warning, silent but visible, that the U.S. is positioning itself for a world where conflict could come from more than one direction at once. Look at each move by itself and it feels prudent. Poland scrambles jets, Romania intercepts, NATO shifts more air defense east, Russia fires a Zircon and drills, Ukraine hits a Russian refinery, the United States parks F-35s in Puerto Rico, Australia expands a nuclear-powered submarine yard, China warns the Philippines. According to Reuters and the BBC, none of these steps is presented as preparation for war. They are framed as routine, as deterrence, as responsible posture. Yet seen together they form a pattern, a slow tightening of the net around a possibility no one wants to name. This is the fog of preparation. The more you prepare to prevent a war, the more your preparations can be read as the prelude to one. Deterrence becomes a mirror. Every reinforcement is reflected as intent. Every exercise is read as a rehearsal. That mirror creates what we call the deterrence spiral, a cycle where restraint and readiness blur until a single mistake looks like a deliberate strike. According to Reuters, Poland calls this the closest point to open conflict since the Second World War. That is not rhetoric. It is a signal that decision time would be measured in hours, not weeks, if one drone kills the wrong person in the wrong place. So ask yourself, are leaders quietly creating a safety margin, or are they winding the spring so tight that one more turn will snap it? If everyone insists they want peace, why do their actions look like pressure, not relief? What if governments are preparing to fight a war while telling us they are trying to avoid it? First comes the planning, then come the deployments, then comes the silence. And in that silence, risk grows. Let's pause and pull the threads together. In Europe, the pattern is unmistakable. According to Reuters, Poland has scrambled jets, shut down airports, and watched Russian drones cross its skies, while Romania has intercepted others. NATO air defenses are shifting east, inch by inch, as leaders warn they are closer to open conflict than at any time since the Second World War. On the other side, Russia is raising the stakes, firing Zircon hypersonic missiles in exercises, flying bombers over the Barents Sea, and striking deep into Ukraine's infrastructure. Beyond Europe, new flashpoints are heating up. F-35s land in Puerto Rico as a warning to Venezuela. China warns the Philippines over the South China Sea. North Korea threatens new tests, and Israel strikes Doha, jolting the Gulf. The United States is quietly moving its own pieces, backing up Poland and the Baltics, pressing NATO allies to cut Russian oil, ramping up cyber defenses, and investing in its defense industry, while Australia commits $8 billion to a new nuclear-powered submarine yard to anchor American reach in the Indo-Pacific. Seen separately, these are defensive moves. Seen together, they trace the outline of preparation. This is not prediction. It is observation. The world is shifting into a posture that looks less like crisis management and more like quiet mobilization. The question is no longer if there are signs. The question is how close these signs are to forming a straight line toward confrontation. The real question is not, will there be a war, but are world leaders quietly building the conditions that will make war unavoidable, even if none of them truly want it? Because history shows that great conflicts rarely begin with a single decision, they begin with a chain of preparations, each one justified as caution, each one defended as deterrence, until deterrence and preparation become indistinguishable. According to the BBC, NATO officials still insist they seek only stability, yet their forces keep shifting east. According to Reuters, Russia claims it is only defending its interests, yet it tests new missiles and strikes deeper than before. From Washington to Beijing, from Warsaw to Canberra, every government says it wants to prevent war, but they are all moving as if they expect one. And that is where the danger lives. When everyone prepares for a conflict that no one officially wants, they can create the very storm they fear. So ask yourself, have we already crossed the invisible line where preparation stops preventing war and starts making it inevitable? If you found this analysis valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like to support our work, and join the conversation in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. Seeing all these signals, do you think world leaders are truly trying to prevent war, or are they secretly preparing for one? Your perspective matters because understanding the present is the first step to shaping the future.